In 1987, DC Comics set about relaunching their preeminent superhero team, the Justice League, in the wake of the Crisis on Infinite Earths event that rebooted the entire DC universe. There would just be one little catch.
DC's editorial decreed that certain heroes that were still technically being reintroduced were off-limits. So this new league will be missing traditional stalwarts like Superman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash. Only Batman was allowed after that line's editor Dennis O'Neil took pity on the league's new creative team.
Now, we've talked about this creative team before, well, two-thirds of this creative team before, in the form of writers Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. Now, they set about putting the Justice League into a new direction. They turned it into a sitcom.
The Justice League, or Justice League International, which it got renamed to in the 7th issue, came under the ownership of a wealthy entrepreneur named Maxwell Lord. Lord was a little more interested in things like Q ratings and publicity rather than actual heroics. This drove off several heroes, including Batman eventually, so Lord replaced the team with others like Booster Gold, a time-traveling hero who is in it more for the money, Guy Gardner, a chauvinistic loudmouth lout of a Green Lantern, and Captain Marvel, a boy who became an adult superhero with the mind of a child, whose teammates would constantly mock him for being blander than white bread.
With the initial pitch of a Justice League team that didn't feature Superman, Wonder Woman, and very little Batman, and a bunch of other superheroes that hardly anyone had ever heard of, who spent most of the time fighting with each other, and were just teaming together just because of the behest of the wealthy sponsor of the team, it sounds like a recipe for disaster. And yet somehow it worked.
The book became a huge hit for DC. The humor provided a perfect counterbalance to the grim and gritty era of superheroes, and artist Kevin Maguire would become the go-to artist for facial expressions. The book was so popular that it expanded to other titles, including Justice League Europe, Justice League Task Force, Extreme Justice, and even Justice League Antarctica.
Now, the series itself eventually ran out of steam in 1996, with Giffen and DeMatteis having left in 1994. But about a decade or so later, DC Comics reunited Giffen and DeMatteis with Maguire to tell a little story about most of the members of that team reuniting. And that's what we're looking at today. This is formerly known as the Justice League.
Maxwell Lord pulls into the drive-thru of a Big Belly Burger where Elron, Lord's former alien robot assistant, is currently employed. Max has a new idea and would like Elron to come along for the ride. However, Elron can't leave the fast food joint without jeopardizing his work visa. He is technically an immigrant. And Max pays no mind, just simply yanking Elron through the drive-thru window and into the back of the limo. Inside, Max explains that he has an idea for a non-profit superhero team that can be easily accessed by the general public. This will be in contrast to the Justice League of America, who oversee everything from their satellite and arrive only when something is happening. Max's troupe would take care of the smaller inconveniences in life. With that, Max and Elron set out to reunite the old Justice League International. First up, Max visits Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, to sell him on the idea. However, Ted points out that he was recently diagnosed with a heart condition, but Max pays no mind to this other than mentioning a very generous benefits package, and begins making contract preparations. Meanwhile, Elron is visiting Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man, and his wife Sue. The two seem perfectly content with life until Elron begins to mention Max's plan, and the two sign up without another word. Married life is boring, and this might spice things up a little.
Okay, I'm going to go over the history of some of these team members, except for Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, and Maxwell Lord, as I pretty much covered their history in my OMAC project review. I will get to Elron later. First up, though, we have Ralph Dibny, an amateur sleuth who managed to isolate an extract found in a Mexican fruit called gingo, and gained the ability to stretch his form over it. No, gingo, not gum-gum. Anyway, Ralph and his wife Sue would travel the country solving various mysteries that Ralph could detect by elongating his nose and using it as a super sniffer of sorts. After that, we have Beatriz da Costa, aka Fire, a former Brazilian secret agent who has the ability to envelop her body in green fire. During the Justice League International run, she was most known for her close kinship with a teammate known as Ice, who was sadly killed in action. However, though, it appears Beatriz has given up the spotlight for a far more lucrative endeavor.
Fire now makes a living running a website that sells naked pictures of her. Max points out the truth, though, that Bea isn't really naked when she's in her fire form, but the idiots online don't really know that. Max points out that if Bea wants in, she'll have to shut down the site. Before she could say anything, Max accepts the offer on her behalf, with the promise of a group website. Meanwhile, Elron tracks down Captain M and assists the nuclear hero in taking down a low-level villain named Man-O-War. Max feels that Captain Atom has the right attitude for the group, as long as he ditches the new costume. After all, this isn't some goofy comic book.
Nathaniel Adam was a disgraced Air Force pilot who volunteered for an experiment in exchange for a pardon. Adam was placed inside a downed alien space vessel, and he set off a nuclear explosion. This wound up bonding Adam's body to the metal structure of the ship, which formed a containment suit around said explosion. Since then, Adam has worked on again, off again for the government as the hero Captain Atom. That's A-T-O-M.
Max drops in on Booster Gold, who is now married to a wealthy 55-year-old cougar. He doesn't mind, as now he gets to live in the lap of luxury. That is until he realizes why Max is there, and before Lord can even make the offer, accepts. Married life isn't all it's cracked up to be. Elrond, on the other hand, is having quite a bit of difficulty recruiting Billy Batson, a.k.a. Captain Marvel. Elrond promises it won't be like before. No more bullying. There'll even be weekly camping trips with sing-alongs and s'mores. But Billy is having none of this. This is all witnessed by Billy's twin sister, Mary. After Elrond leaves, the Batsons transform into their hero personas and takes off. Mary wonders why Billy shot down Elrond's offer. The robot didn't appear malicious. But Billy won't have anything to do with Max O'Lord, but this does give Mary an idea. Back at Max's office, he and Elrond go over the prospective lineup for the group when Mary Marvel arrives, wondering if she can provide some assistance.
Mary Batson is the twin sister of Billy Batson, and much like her brother, she has the ability to turn into an adult superhero by uttering the magic word Shazam. Now, I say adult rather loosely, as most renderings I see of her make her look to be about 19-ish. Okay, so, yeah, technically she is an adult, but she still looks rather youthful in her appearance. And I mention this because, much like her brother in Justice League International, the idea is Mary is a naive goody two-shoes who's not exactly hip to the realities of the actual world.
The group begins to assemble at the office Max purchased. Bee and Sue chit-chat while ogling the male movers, grading them on a 1 to 10 scale. Ralph overhears Sue say she settled for a 4 and goes crying to Max. Meanwhile, Captain Atom bumps into Mary Marvel as they arrive. However, he's radioactive and Mary tries to quell any further exposure, fearing that Atom will make her infertile. Booster arrives with Beetle and immediately starts drooling over Mary, and Beetle has to remind Booster that Mary is only 16. However, it turns out the heroes aren't exactly welcome in their new neighborhood. First, the mayor and city council don't want any possible villain activity in their sleepy little burg. Second, a group of loquacious hoodlums called the E Street Bloodsuckers is planning an attack of their own. It turns out the gang can pass a sparkly green orb from their craniums, which manifests in different abilities. The attack is sprung while Max is speaking with the council, and the orb is passed to the gang's leader Jerome, who turns into a giant green monster. Jerome goes after Mary, who proceeds to drop him in one punch. It turns out the Bloodsuckers were child prodigies who graduated college as teenagers, and then all decided to fix up their own neighborhood by becoming the dominant gang. The group's ability to apprehend metahumans with minimal collateral damage results in the city council giving the Super Buddies their blessing.
The name Super Buddies stems from the fact that the original working title for this book was 1-800-Super Friends. When the title changed, so did the team name.
The group later gathers for the premiere of a promotional spot that Max made. It's an overly goofy, cartoonish video met with nearly universal disgust, except for Mary, who loved it. Before anything else can happen, the group then disappears in a flash, except for Sue, Elrond, and Max. It appears that the Super Buddies have attracted the attention of Roulette.
Roulette is the granddaughter of a man named Terry Sloan, who was a World War II-era hero named Mr. Terrific. Now, when a man named Michael Holt assumed the mantle of Mr. Terrific, an enraged Roulette set up a casino/gladiatorial arena called The House. She then stole Holt's T-Sphere technology and used it to abduct heroes, brainwash them through subliminal messaging, and forcing them to fight in the gladiatorial arena, sometimes to the death.
The team is broken up into 3 cells, one containing Booster and Beetle, another containing Ralph and Captain Atom, and the last containing Fire and Mary Marvel. Roulette then decides to set up a fight between the team's 2 strongest members, Mary Marvel and Captain Atom. When Mary receives the news that she's favored to drop Atom in a dead bang, she's appalled, even more so when Fire points out that this is a fight to the death. Still, the 2 are brought into the arena, and Roulette turns up the mind control. Mary and Atom begin fighting, with Mary dominating the fight and cracking Atom's containment suit. Roulette then calls for the killing blow. Meanwhile, Fire intensifies her power and manages to set her cell on fire, which actually destroys her clothes, meaning that now she really is naked. She then busts out Booster and Beetle. The problem is they don't really want to leave, thanks to the mind control. Bee then manages to override the mind control by thinking in Portuguese, her native tongue. She then breaks Ralph out and he joins Booster and Beetle in longing for their cells. The foursome then spots the visual feed from the arena, realizing that if Captain Atom goes, everyone goes. The mind control over the men snaps, and Fire races to try to talk Mary down. Fire isn't much of a match for one of the Marvel family, but she does distract Mary long enough for Booster to place Atom in a force field. The force field holds up long enough for Mary to punch herself out of the mind control. An angry Roulette teleports the Super Buddies out of the house, and Mary realizes what she did to Captain Atom and bursts into tears. It's then that Booster notices a large alien ship coming in over the city. Bee, Mary, and Ralph head towards the office, while Booster and Beetle take Atom to a nearby hospital. However, the hospital is not equipped to handle a being who is essentially a living nuclear reactor, so Beetle desperately tries to call Max to get some help. Unfortunately, Max is a little preoccupied with the owner of the large ship that just flew in. Manga Khan is back and wants his old property returned to him.
Manga Khan is a gaseous entity trapped inside a metallic suit who works as sort of an intergalactic trade specialist. Elron used to be Khan's assistant until the former had to give the robot up in exchange for dealing with longtime Justice League foe Despero. Now, Elron is one of many robotic assistants that Khan has. In fact, most of them are actually named after classic sci-fi writers. Elron, of course, being named after L. Ron Hubbard. There's also K-Dick and High 9. However, it appears recently Khan has changed his naming strategy a little bit.
Manga Khan has sent his chief robot assistant J-Lo to negotiate for Elron's return. But Elron doesn't want to work for Khan again. But the Trade Baron believes that he has the perfect bargaining chip in Nort.
Nort Esplamade Niesmacher is an anthropomorphized dog alien who became a member of the Green Lantern Corps thanks to a prominent relative. Nort is just a bumbling doofus who rarely seems to get the one-up of anyone in battle. In fact, Maxwell Lord made him a member of Justice League Antarctica for the sole purpose of not having to deal with him.
Meanwhile, Blue Beetle is tired of Max constantly hanging up on him, so he calls Barbara Gordon, aka Oracle, instead. She negotiates for a branch of Star Labs to pick up Captain Atom and transport him to a better facility. Fire, Mary, and Ralph arrive at the office, where Mary continues crying over nearly killing Atom, and Bee borrows Max's jacket, just as Max is beginning to enter negotiations with Manga Khan himself. Outside, Ralph and Sue summarize the events that have led to this. It's something they like to do in their spare time, give comic book-esque summaries of things. It's then that they notice the actual Justice League has been looking on from afar. This puts Fire on edge, as it turns out the Flash once tried to use the super speed to grope her at one point, and he got third-degree burns instead. Booster and Beetle also bump into the JLA as they return. Meanwhile, negotiations with Manga Khan are not going smoothly. It turns out that Khan suffers from a rare disease that causes him to constantly talk in soliloquies, and he forgot to take his medication before entering the negotiation. Also, Nort has to go walkies. Unfortunately, Nort winds up relieving himself in one of Khan's attack droids, and this, coupled with Booster accidentally tripping over one of the attack droids, causes a scuffle to break out between Khan forces and the Super Buddies. As Mary Marvel takes out a large swath of droids, Sue does the only thing she can think of, and takes Manga Khan hostage by saying she takes Manga Khan hostage. This, along with the JLA's intercedence, is enough for Manga Khan to give in to Max's demands and let him keep Elron and to never ask for the robot's return. As he heads back to space with his tail between his legs, Manga Khan's medication wears off again. Back on Earth, the JLA warns the Super Buddies not to overstep their bounds again, and this is met with total indifference. Meanwhile, Nort is offered a position with Super Buddies Antarctica.
And so concludes, formerly known as the Justice League. Now, the series proved to be a big hit. In fact, not only did it win an Eisner Award, but DC commissioned a sequel soon thereafter called I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League. And that sequel would prove to be prophetic in many, many, many ways. But, that's another story for another time. Anyway, how was this book? Well, I mean, the creative team really didn't miss a beat. Like I said, they won an award for this, and they deserve it. There's spectacular artwork from Kevin Maguire, and I know it can be kind of hard for me to try to relate jokes in a humor book without just, like I said, explaining the jokes. But, yeah, this book is just hilarious. There's a lot of great laughs in this. And there's some great character interactions. I particularly love the relationship between Fire and Mary Marvel. It's very evocative of the relationship that Fire had with Ice. That being said, unfortunately, the book is not perfect. The whole stuff in the house with Roulette and the gladiatorial arena and that jazz, it kind of drags a little. It's it is fairly boring. I kind of wish that maybe MangaCon had arrived very early on, and then maybe the Justice League would show up, and you would get more interaction between the Super Buddies and the Justice League, instead of just this dragging midpoint with Roulette. It just doesn't seem to fit very well. But overall, that's kind of a minor quibble. I'm going to give formerly known as the Justice League an A. Now, I believe this is out of print, but you can get this on the Comixology service if you want so. And with that, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Remember, you can help support my work at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcatproductions, where you can request a trade be placed in the randomizer, aka the cardboard box.